Hi everybody, my name's Carolyn Doughty and I'm just doing a fairly short video on how I insert wire armatures into my silicone babies and dolls. I'm going to show you with my little magical unicorn, Dalmain. He is the first one, oh sorry, she, it's a girl isn't it? She's the first one I've actually done, finished. She's a new sculpt. And I've wired her up so she actually will stand and she'll sit and she'll pose. When they first come out of the mould, they're all floppy. You can't really have a unicorn with floppy legs like that. I don't put armatures in all my dolls, only ones that I feel are better posed. So some get armatures and some don't. Most of the time they don't. But this is little Dalmain. I've poured four more of her, and I'm just going to wire them up. I've made the wires here in advance, and I'm going to show you how I do it. It looks really messy. It isn't the nicest job to do. I hate doing it, but this is how I do it. I don't know if there's a right and a wrong way. I don't think there's any one way that's right and one way that's wrong. I know some people do wire up by putting the wires in the pour. When they pour it, they actually put the wires in the mould. I don't know how they do that. I've never worked out exactly how to do that. So this is how I do it anyway. Yeah. So I've got some. This is how I pour her. I keep saying him now. This is the pour spout where the tail goes, and then what I'm doing is cutting off the excess silicone, and I'm wiring the tail so that it can be posed, so the tail can be up or down or whatever. The wire I'm using is 2mm aluminium wire, modelling wire. I use aluminium because it's very bendy, and in theory it'll take a lot of breaking. I mean, obviously if you bend it backwards and forwards for any length of time, it's going to break in one place. But I would hope that anybody buying a doll, spending a lot of money on something that's been handmade, won't be doing that. It's okay to pose them. As I say, this one will actually stand up. She will actually stand up on her lovely legs. She's a unicorn foal, so she has really long legs for the size of her, and she's very, very sweet. There she is. So yeah, I just adore her. So I've made one, and I made it on the last minute before the show, which is next weekend, the Basildon Doll Show, and then I thought, I want to make some more of these for the show, so I quickly poured another four really, really quickly, and I'm wiring them up. So as I say, people have asked me how do I wire up, so I'm going to show you. Don't be put off because it looks really messy and difficult. It is difficult. It is as difficult as it looks. There's no two ways about it, and it's not nice to do, but it has to be done. Okay, so I'm going to pop Dalmain on the side while I do her. I'll pop her here. This one I've wired to show you how it looks wired, but I haven't closed the seams up, so you can still see the wire inside, and I need to close the seams up. So the one I'm going to do today, I will show you how I do it, and I'll show you how I close the seams. So I'll pop her on one side. Okay, so this is my little one I've done today. I've trimmed around the pour spout to give her her little tail. It doesn't matter what the tail looks like, because I put fur over the tail when she's finished, and on the mane. So that's where I cut down through her back to get the wire in, and her tail. It comes out at her tail, comes out at her head, and it comes out at the 4 legs. Okay, so the first thing I do, Now obviously she's poured in white, so she's going to get mucky. She's going to get, you know, bits stuck to her because she's a bit sticky, which is normal. So what I will do is I'm going to cut her open, put the wires in, and then at the end I'll sew her. I'll put her back together again, sew her up, cure the silicone, and then I'll wash her. I won't wash her as I go along because I don't want any water going inside the actual seam part, inside the bit that I cut open. So the first thing I'm going to do, I actually have a surgical knife because it's the sharpest thing I can get, and I cut down through the back of her. I cut to her hips. Now obviously if you're doing it with a baby you will do it differently, but you know, it applies for all of them. I don't armature my large babies. I don't particularly like them. The only ones I armature is my my Eleanor, the fairy, the large fairy, because I need her to be upright and be able to hold herself. But I don't always armature her arms, and I don't armature her legs because I prefer the softness of a doll. But you know, you can't have a doll that's like that. That's just going to collapse. But even when she's done, she's still lovely and soft. She feels gorgeous. She just doesn't feel like a toy at all. She just feels really real. She's just lovely. Okay, so I've cut down the back, and at this stage I'm just going to go for it. So it's down into the hips and down into the shoulders, because it's the hips and shoulders we need to go from. So I'm going to get this wire armature that I have prepared. What I did was measured her body length and her legs, make sure it's longer than her legs, and a bit that goes into her head and a bit that goes into her tail. Obviously these will be trimmed. So I'm going to go in, and what I need to do is put one of the legs through the inside of her shoulder and push it down as far as I can. Now, being quite a thin wire, it will bend when it's inside the body. It will bend. So as soon as you can't feed it through any longer, I just let it poke out and I pull it from the other side. So I'd like to get it down as far as there. Yeah, there we go. I let it pull out, and then I just get some pliers and pull it. Now, your doll will get pulled into all sorts of weird shapes. Try not to worry too much, try not to freak out. There's no other way. If you do it this way, there's no real other way of doing it. So I'm going to go down her other shoulder. You can actually feel the wire going through, so you know where it is. If it goes too near the edge, the edge of the silicone, it will cause a kind of dimple. Not a huge deal in sort of an animal like this, but you wouldn't really want that in a baby's leg, for instance. But then a baby's leg's not as thin as this. There we go. Again, I'm going to pull the wire through. Now, as I pull it through, this bit here will go down into the body and fit, and it'll form the shoulders. So that's what it looks like at the moment. So I'm going to give it a tug so that it's deep down into the shoulders. Like that. Now it's a good idea to actually measure the length of the legs before you start, so that, because they stretch quite a bit, and when you put the wire through you can't always be sure how long they're supposed to be, so it's better to measure it beforehand so you've got a bit of an idea. Right, I'm going to put the back legs through, so I'm going to find the hip and feed it through. Try and get it as far as the joint. Yep. And this one. There we are. Okay, so I'm going to again pull it through so that the hips are flat. It's down flat into the torso. There we are. So that's what we have. We have the wires into the legs. This is the wire that goes into the tail, and this is the one that goes up into the head. Okay, I'm going to pop the tail one through just so I can get rid of it. Doesn't matter too much whether this looks good or not. It's going to be covered in fur. It's just to feed it through in the right place, really. Right, I'm going to go up through the head. What I'm going to do is not cut the neck, but cut it on the head so that I can feed it through and pull it back out at the head. Because I want to do a kind of loop in the head so that the wire loops round and I'll be able to move the head into different positions. So in doing a kind of circle round, that means that I can be a bit more. If you just put a single wire into a head, then the head will swivel on the wire. Whereas if you put a loop in and put the head over it, you can actually move it that way as well as that way, which you wouldn't be able to if it was just single wire. It would just swivel round on it. Oops, I need to feed it through first. There she is. So as you can see, if it was just like that, it would have no control over it at all. Right, that just fits in the slits that I've just made. So that's when it's all closed up, it will be it will be fine. I need a bit more of a slit. Sometimes you do use slits a bit too deep, and the next thing it comes out at the side of the head, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. Can be fixed. There we are. So that's how her head will be when I've closed it all up, and her back. So that will be all closed up. Now we'll do the rest of her legs. Right, sometimes I do a bit more of a slit here just to give me more to work with, and then that goes back in. Inside the leg and down to the hoof. There we are. So this is why you need to know how long the legs are, because basically that leg could be that short or it could be that long. When you actually come to finish it off, you need to know sort of approximately how long, and make sure obviously the legs are both the same size. Just going to bend that for now. Same with this one. These are very thin legs, so I just have to make sure that the wire is more or less central as I feel it going through. And same with the back ones. And obviously I've sculpted these to be anatomically correct, the shape of the legs and everything, but when you put the wires in, that all goes to pot. So we have to when we actually finish it, we have to make sure that it's standing in a position that is correct, and obviously not have a bend there that goes like that, and then the bend is here, and then there's another one there, I think. But I'll be referring to pictures, and the bend's there. Same with this, they go back, the leg kind of goes like that, and then there's this bend here, and then obviously when you put the wire in, it just goes into it all goes to pot, the shape of it. Just do this last leg. Right. Okay, now these front legs are approximately 3 inches, just under I think, so I'll just measure them, make sure I get the length correct. Yep, that's about right. Yep, both about right. So what I'm going to do is snip off the wire at the bottom here, give it just a few millimetres poking out, and then I'm going to bend it round into a loop and back into the leg. Helps if you hold your wire cutters the right way around. You don't need wire cutters for this. To be honest, this thin 2mm wire can be cut with scissors. I just prefer to use wire cutters because it can ruin your scissors. Right, I've got a little, somewhere, yeah, there. A little pair of, well, these jewellery pliers. Actually, I've got a better pair than this, but I can't just put my hands on it. And it goes into the hoof there, but not too high up because it's got to sit on that, it's got to stand on that. The same with these. Just doing a bit of a cut so I can push it in. And loop round, and it gets embedded in the, without coming out at the top of the hoof. This does happen sometimes, it gets ends up sticking out. There we are, that's 2 front legs done. Didn't measure that. This one's just over 3 inches. That's too long. To make sure you don't stretch the legs any more than they should be. It doesn't matter sometimes if it's like we did Jameer made Gramps, and when she gave him one to me to wire and paint, and I did, and when we put them together with her grandpa, we noticed that my grandpa's legs were a lot shorter than hers, and it didn't matter, but clearly she'd stretched them out more than me. I don't know which one was right, because obviously the sculpt had gone by then, but it was you just have to be aware when you're doing limbs. Just go out a teeny bit more, I think. Yeah, that's about right. As I say, it doesn't have to be perfect, but just something to be aware of. If one leg's an inch longer than the other, it's not going to stand up very straight. There we are, and so that's a little unicorn foal. Tail, doesn't matter how long it is, just what looks right really. Okay, go up to there, and there she is. I'll come back and show you how I seal the areas that I've cut open. but you know, it looks messy, but it's actually not that difficult to do. It's just, you just have to take a deep breath, hold your nose and jump in, because it is scary pulling at the legs and the arms to try and get the wires in, but you know, it's well worth it. I know. Okay, I'll come back in a minute. Okay, I'm ready to start sealing the this bit, the hole. I need to work quite quickly because this silicone is already starting to gel. I use Platsil gel for a lot of this type of work, sealing seams and things like that, basically because it cures very, very quickly, and I don't want to be sitting around holding seams together for hours on end. Having said that, I don't particularly sit here holding it together, because I'll show you what I do. I actually sew the seam together, so it can be messy, this bit, as you can see, but I need to make sure that it gets into all the whole of the hole and seals it up. Right, I'm going to do the back and the head first, and then I'll come back and do the legs, because this is the most tricky bit. It doesn't help when you pick up a brush that keeps coming apart. I'm going to move the little unicorn away, I don't want her to get slobbered on. Right, so what I'm going to do, I've added silicone inside this big hole and inside her head. So I'm going to actually literally sew it together. So I'm going to get some a needle and thread. I'm going to use a colour that will show up, so when I come to take the stitches out, I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to sew her together. Now, quite a lot of the silicone will ooze out while I'm doing this, which is okay. I can tidy it up just before I finish doing this. So I'm just going to do straight stitches, I don't know what you call this stitch. Basically to make the two sides come together perfectly. This back will be covered, a lot of it, by the mane, but it doesn't mean that I don't want it to look nice. There we are. And also it means that you get the sides completely stuck on the inside as well as the outside. You don't want it just a big gaping hole in the middle and just to close up at the top. There we are, that's that one. Let's get some more cotton. So Platsil, I use Platsil Gel 00, which is the same softness approximately as the silicone I pour in, or very similar anyway. Which means that you don't get, you know, a hard line across where you've my words aren't coming today. It's because I'm trying to think of what I'm saying and trying to think of what I'm doing at the same time. I'm not very good at multitasking. Or at least talking and doing at the same time. Not when it comes to little unicorns and complicated little sewing jobs. Can you see what I'm doing? So the way this was sculpted, it's got a little ridge coming along where the seam was for the actual mould, because I wanted something for the fur to grab hold of when I come to put the mane on. Right, there we go. Right, so those holes, as it were, are now sewn up. I just need to tidy up the edges so that there's no drips. I just use, a lot of the time I just use clear silicone. Sometimes I'll use the same colour silicone that the doll was poured in, but if I could find some, oh there it is. Just got some thinner on my brush and I'm just brushing away the excess. So we don't get drip marks. There we are. So what's going to happen now with this little Dalmane is she's going to go in the oven. Because you can let it cure naturally, but I am super impatient, and so she's going to go in the oven. I'll come back when she's out. Okay, little unicorn's been in the oven for 5-10 minutes and just on very, very low, almost just barely on the oven. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the stitches out. So I'm just going to gently pull them out. Come on, little unicorn. There we are. Whoops. There we are. Do his head. Oh, I know it hurts, a good boy, a girl. Why do I keep wanting to call him a boy? Her a boy. Probably because she just looks so feminine with her when she's finished. I originally was going to make it a boy, but it was clear it was a girl when finished. Sometimes we don't have a lot of choice over these things. There we are. There's all her stitches out. So I'm going to now I'm going to sew up her leg, so there'll be a hole on each of the legs higher up where the wire first came out and went back in again, and then also the bottom of the hooves where the wire could just pop out any minute like that. Okay, and then once I've done that, we can give her a good wash and get rid of all the fluff, and then she's ready to paint. Oops. Okay, let's get rid of all this for now. Okay, I'm going to mix some more silicone, because that will have, yeah, it's completely hardened. Well, not hardened, but it's gone. Even though I did put her in the oven. Sometimes if you put them in the oven, when they come out, the silicone's still workable, because obviously it's fast cured in the oven, and you can still work with the silicone that was in your pot, but not with Platsil, because it does cure quite quickly on its own. Right, okay, Platsil. Just a little bit of each. If I can find my... why can I never find anything? Oh, this is crazy. I'll just switch the camera off while I look for it. Okay, found the sticks. So I'm just going to get a mixing stick and just do a little bit of B, and then the same amount of A. With a different stick, obviously. You can't put the same stick into A and B, because then you would get it would start to cure basically in the pot. Right, bit of twirl. Right, a little bit on here. And here. And here. So they are the 4 holes in the middle of the legs. So I'm going to just sew those up now, otherwise I'm going to get silicone everywhere. So you can knot your thread, but to be honest, it doesn't pull through like you would with fabric. It does tend to stay put if you just do an extra stitch at the beginning. Right, I'm going to stitch that together. I'm just going to go over this, like a kind of. As you can see, I'm not a great sewer. There we are. Just keep it together. This one's not going to be too bad. Sticky. Lovely. There we are. So what did you do on Sunday? Well, I sewed up a unicorn's leg and back. There we are. Last one. Have to get some more thread. Always happens, doesn't it, on the last few stitches? You run out. I get people writing saying to me, "Oh, you're left-handed." I don't even notice. People notice that I'm left-handed when they see me doing things on the videos, and I never really think about it. I do some things with my right hand. I use my scissors with my right hand. I mainly use my cutlery with right-handed. Although sometimes if I'm not thinking what I'm doing, I'll pick up a spoon. You know, like if I'm eating a yoghurt pot or something, I'll pick up the spoon with my right hand and start eating and not realise, with my left hand, and not realise what I'm doing. I do a lot of things with my right hand, just through it being easier. It's easier to learn to use right-handed scissors than it is to try and find left-handed scissors. As you can see, I have hundreds of pairs of scissors here waiting, but I'm always losing them. I either have too many, I've got 3 pairs here now, plus the snippy ones. So I've either got too many or too few. At the moment I've got too many, which I can live with. So that's that. I just need to do the hooves. I can find my brush, which I've now lost. There it is. In preparing for this show, I've got everything all over, so I really, really need to have a clear out. But I can't do, because I'm doing so many different things. I'm in the middle of sculpting, siliconing, sewing, wiring, also many different aspects of it, and with me being short of time for the show, I don't have time to keep putting everything away and getting other things out, so place is an absolute tip. There we are. Right, I'm not going to sew up the hooves because that can just lay on the top of the hoof like that. Okay, so that's going in the oven now for 5 minutes. Be back in a bit. Right, here we are back again. She's all sealed up now. Just need to take these little stitches out, these last little stitches out. Go on, little girl, let go of the stitches. There we are. That's a good girl. There we are. It's an awkward one because it was quite a tight seam to sew. Jabir said to me, "Why don't you use the same colour cotton as the silicone?" And I thought, oh, we wouldn't be able to see it for taking out the stitches, but actually she's got a point when it comes to stitches that won't come out. Anyway, they're all out. They're all out and she's ready to play. So there she is. She's gone from floppy to, you know, not hard, but you know, she can stand up, she can sit down, she can turn her head. So that's how I do it anyway. You know, everybody's different. Okay, I'm going to come back in a bit and maybe show you some more. Okay, bye. Okay, so here we are. The unicorns are all wired up and I fitted their eyes and they're all ready for airbrushing. I've given them a thin coat of silicone just to give them a nice finish to be able to start with. And I'm actually going to airbrush these, so quite a few people have said to me that they'd quite like to see what I do in the way of airbrushing. So I probably won't show you the whole thing, but I'll show you how I get started and how I mix the paints, the silicone for the airbrush. Now a lot of people say, oh, you can't use the airbrush with silicone paints because it clogs up the airbrush, and it's true, it does, but the other good thing about silicone is that it sets as one complete piece. So as we all know, when we're painting with silicone, when you come to reuse a dish, you just pull out the silicone and you've got a nice clean pot to start off again. And the same applies for the airbrush. This is my airbrush. It's a Badger 105 Patriot. Came from America. I really love it. I've had 2 or 3 airbrushes. I'm not brilliant at airbrushing. I don't really know. I haven't had any teaching on airbrushes, or I don't know that much about them. All I know is how I use mine. So I just use it as a spray gun, basically. So what I do is, when I've used the airbrush the previous time, I don't generally wash out the pot. What I do is I leave it and it cures in one piece. So the next time I come to it, I take it apart, and with this airbrush, it's a case of you might have to make sure you don't lose any little bits. A number of times I've been on the floor on my hands and knees looking for a part that's come off. So you have to get to know your own airbrush, really. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm basically removing the needle and the needle obviously goes through the whole thing, goes through the barrel. So you see, that's what you don't do. You don't drop something on the floor, which I'm just going to go on the floor and find. Okay, well luckily I found it quite quickly. One of these days I won't be able to, and I don't know what's going to happen, because I don't even know how to get spare parts for this airbrush, with it being an American one. Anyway, I won't worry about that unless it happens. I'll probably go and do it spectacularly on camera now. So this is my airbrush. So I've taken the needle out. So what I do now is I quite literally get hold of the plug of silicone and pull it out. So it ends up spectacularly clean inside. Now occasionally you do get a bit clogged into the tube, but I think I'm quite lucky in that I don't think it's happened this time. The airbrush, I don't know if anyone's not familiar with an airbrush. That's the compressor there, that machine that's just turned itself on. Basically it turns itself on, fills itself with air for you to use, and then it switches off, and you use it merrily, and then every now and then it'll switch itself back on again to top up. And the other thing which I should mention before I start is you do not use an airbrush without a mask, because you're just going to breathe in the chemicals. This is a type of mask you have to use. It's no good putting a dust mask on. You have to use a mask that's designed for vapours. They look really stupid on. I just look like a blue bottle with this on, but I don't airbrush anywhere where anybody can see me, and I'm certainly not going to let you see what it looks like on, but it will stop me from breathing in basically lighter fluid, which is what I'm going to be using to thin down my silicone. And silicone, you really don't want to breathe that stuff in. It's it's probably not potent in itself, but you know, you don't want to line your lungs with stuff like that. So this plug that I've taken out, I love taking it out. It just gives me a really good feeling of satisfaction. So I'm going to put it all back together again. So that's the, don't do that. If you do that, you know, everything just goes flying off your desk. So I'll put my I need to put this pin on first, which screws on somehow like that. That fastens the airbrush to the mechanism here, so that tightens and loosens. I don't tighten it until it's all put together. The airbrush actually goes through this bit, the trigger bit. If the trigger bit falls out, it is a bit tricky getting it back together again. This is the bit that very often gets bunged up with silicone. Very easy to clean. I'm not going to clean it today unless it decides that it's not working, because I'm short of time. But if I can't get this to work, I will have to. So I'm just going to tighten that nut up, pop this on around it, and hope that it works. The lid, obviously, it's quite handy for if you're holding your airbrush at an angle. You have to make sure that the little pinprick hole at the top is always open. If ever that gets clogged up, you'll end up with a right mess, because it will just backfire. And probably you'll get silicone all over your face when it explodes, which is probably quite funny, but not ideal. Okay, so I'm just going to test it out by putting some liquid into it. I'm going to put some airbrush cleaner in and make sure that it, so you can see how clumsy I am, why it just never, I'm always getting in a mess with this. There, you can see, I don't know if you can see it coming out there. Yeah. There we go, it's pretty good. So I'm going to pop my mask on. Well, oops. In theory I'm going to put my mask on. I'm actually not, because I can't talk while I've got the mask on, so I'm going to take my life in my hands and actually not wear the mask to start with. I might, when I switch the camera off, I might pop my mask back on then. But just to start with, I'm not going to. I'm going to mix up some silicone. Now, I usually use Psycho paint, but I am desperately low on silicone at the moment. So I'm using Platzil. You can paint with Platzil or Psycho paint, but I prefer using Psycho paint for the airbrush because it's a bit stronger. But I'm going to use Platzil because I haven't got any Psycho paint. So I'm just going to ladle out a couple of spoonfuls, and same with A. There we are. Now the silicone needs to be quite dilute, as you can imagine, when you're using your airbrush. So I need to dilute it down quite a lot. Now, with doing the unicorns, I'm going to mainly use a grey. Obviously, when you're doing your baby or you're doing other things, you'll be wanting to change colours. So what you should do probably is dilute down your silicone, the clear, and then pop it into different pots, and you can add your colour. But I'm just going to do it all in one go because I only really want. I'm going to be using 2 colours, but the second colour will be towards the end. So as I say, I'm going to use naphtha, or you can't actually get it in the UK, I don't think, so I get lighter fluid, which is the same thing, and mix that with it. Mix it really well. As I say, Psycho paint, Platzil does cure much quicker than Psycho paint, so I have to be fairly nifty with this. But putting a lot of thinner in, which is what we're going to do, does slow down the cure time a little bit. You'll have to excuse the state of my workspace. We've just been getting ready for a doll show, and I've done I think about over 40 dolls for this doll show in the last 3 months, and so I am in desperate need for a tidy up. But these unicorns are the last thing I'm doing for the show, so I'll be able to start tidying up after the show. Right, I need a bit more thinner in. The consistency is really what we're looking for, is sort of like a milk consistency. If it's too thick, it just will not go through the airbrush, or it'll go globby. Certainly will clog up your airbrush, and it will cure too quickly as well. Oh, it's going to be fun doing this without a mask on. I think I probably will put a mask on ultimately as soon as I start actually spraying the unicorns. I'll just show you how the airbrush works. First of all, right, I think that's okay consistency. Right, I'm going to use a black to tint the silicone. You can go quite dark with this, because the airbrush sprays so lightly. Sometimes you think it's going to come out really black or really high colour, and actually it's not. I usually test it out on a kitchen towel or a spare piece of silicone before I start, or both. Right, I'll just test that, it might be too dilute. So we just tip it into the, I don't even know what they're called, the bit where the paint goes. And I'm just going to test it out on a bit of kitchen towel. Probably dark enough. Okay, you see I've got a fair amount of control over it. The closer I go and the more I pull the trigger back, the darker the colour is. So if I can start far away, I'll do it quite low. And then it goes quite dark. I think that's going to be dark enough. I might just add a teeny bit more colour if I've got some more colour. I don't know, I think this is running out. Yeah, it's better. Sorry, I keep forgetting this is off camera. Right, we'll try it again. Better. You can see it's still coming out dark, grey, but it's darker than it was. If I pull the trigger right back, it gets quite dark. Even right, yeah, that's good. Okay. Now what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be giving the unicorn a dappled effect. I won't go into details how I'm doing that, but I'm just going to be doing it. The chances of you wanting to do the same effect are so incredibly low anyway. But I'm just going to work away with the camera still on. So I'm just going to test it out on a piece of actual silicone. Yeah, it's pretty good. There we go. So we know it's working. Now, even when the airbrushed silicone is dry, if you place it paint down on a surface, any surface really, it will come off. You'll find that there are areas where it's rubbed off. So what I do is I'll do one side of a baby, I'll completely airbrush it, do all the colours I need to do, then I'll do a thin coat of seal coat over the top of it, let that all cure before I turn it over, because it's just asking for trouble to put that face down on something. Obviously it's not cured yet, but it's still, I find that it does come away because it's so thin. So what I do is I'll be airbrushing the unicorns, but I'll be putting them in the little oven to fast cure them. But I'm only going to be doing, I'm not going to be putting them on their faces or on their, if I airbrush this part, I won't be putting it down like that. So I'll probably do the front part first, the top of it, completely do it, seal it, and then turn it over to do the bottom. So I'm going to just have the unicorn that I'm working on the workbench. Okay, and for this I need some what I call cotton wool buds. I think in America they call them Q-tips, which I don't have. I'm going to go and get some of those. Okay, right, I'm going to be working without narrating because as I say, I want to put my mask on, and I can't talk while I've got my mask on. I can't do anything with my mask on. I can hardly breathe, to be quite honest. It's horrible. I hate them. So I'm just going to put my mask on and then I'll get going. Right, that's all 4 of the little new unicorns are airbrushed with the grey. I'm just going to mix up another colour, just a very skin tone pink, which I'm going to just spray on the nose and the ears just to lift the colour a little bit. So I'm going to make up a little bit of silicone. I don't need very much, just 1 tubful for this. Right, I'm going to use the flesh tone. Well, the actual colour's called Blood, if I can find. Yeah, this is the actual colour. I don't need that much, so I just take it off the lid. I use this colour a lot in the painting of the babies. It's really useful. It's a very natural pink colour for whatever I'm doing, really. It probably needs to be fairly dark, the colour really in this, so that I can just spray a teeny bit. It's just for touches. There we are. Dear. Right. I've picked up a pot that has got some silicone around the edge of it, and it's now got a piece of silicone in the middle of the actual pot like that. Now I don't want that getting stuck in my airbrush. Better. Just test out the colour on my trusty kitchen roll. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to get my unicorns. 3 out of 4 of them are cured, and that ping was the last one being cured, so I'm just going to get 3 of them. Heads up, they've not been sealed, these ones yet, but I think I'm going to get away with not painting the undersides, to be honest, with them being dappled. So I'm going to do the pink, and then I'm going to seal the whole of the top of them. I'm just going to get the no, I won't. Okay, I'm going to start painting. I can start messing around, moving my chair. I'll never get back up here. My I work on this. This is my studio, and I work on a kitchen worktop, which is kitchen worktop height, which means that I've got to have a chair that's higher than usual. So I've got a draftsman's chair, and last week I'd had it for quite a while, and it broke, and I went flying off it. So I haven't got a proper chair at the moment, so what I'm using is a bar stool, and every time I move it's really difficult, so I'm not going to get up unless I really have to. Right, mask on. There we are. I'm going to do the 4th one off camera because I'm not going to be bothered jumping up and down, and then I'm going to paint the whole of it over in a very light layer of silicone, and then cure that, and then I'm ready to do the finishing touches. Okay, and they're all finished. So this is how they've all turned out. I think they're absolutely gorgeous. So as you can see, they have very light wires in them. They're still very bendy, but they are strong enough to hold themselves up once their legs are balanced out. But I wanted them so that they would still be cuddly. You can pick them up in your hand and cuddle them. So yeah, I've done 5 at the moment for the doll show. 5 little unicorns. Well, 5 unicorn foals, because they've only just been born. Sorry, the lighting's not great, it's still dark. I've got to take these over to Jameer's because these are going to the show on Sunday. So that's the effect I got from the airbrush. Sort of like a dappled effect. I've done all of them the same colour because basically I was really short of time, so it was easier to do the same colour. So, but I've as you can see, I've done slightly different mains on each one. This one's a lighter one, so I went for the darker main. But I absolutely adore these. I wish I could keep one myself. If I could, I would, but they all have to go to the show. This was my number 1. She is so sweet. But she's still squidgy, even though she's wired up, she's still very, very squidgy. Soft touch, almost like foam. See? Okay, so that's how I do my wiring up and my airbrushing. I'm sure everybody does it differently, but that's just how I do it. It looks an absolute mess while you're doing it, as you can see. You look like you're never going to get anywhere with it. It's never going to look right again. But as you can see, it's all worth it. Okay, thank you for watching.